Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. I'm Daniel Childs. Hope you're doing really well on this Tuesday. It's team selector time for the Carabao Cup game against Newcastle at St James's Park tomorrow night. A little bit strange to be facing the same opponent in a space of a couple of days, but I think there is obviously some variation with this. Change in location, but also I think change in personnel is kind of the big thing into this game, because we know how Maresca has kind of worked with these different competitions. We know some players who started and played a majority of the game on Sunday will not be featuring in this game for obvious reasons. So we'll delve into that, the variation, and whether Chelsea can progress in a competition. I think they've got a good chance of maybe going all the way, in which they nearly did last season. Before we do jump into Maresca's press conference, we'll look at Newcastle and then I'll give you my predicted lineup. Please do support the show, like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below, and a massive thank you to the guys at Alloy Collectors for supporting the show. Finally able, the new studio, to put Alloy Collectors, the metal home shirt, behind me here in this shelf, which I think are great additions to the new studio. And you can get yourself one, whether it's the retro one, last season's kit, this season's kit, the home and away or goalkeeper, using my discount code SonOfChelsea at checkout to get 15% off your orders. So definitely go and support Alloy Collectors. I think they make some really thoughtful football and Chelsea specific collectibles, and as well officially licensed. The other thing I want to quickly mention here is I finally set up a Patreon for Son of Chelsea. I've been thinking about doing it for a while, but now with the new studio and the feeling of a new era and, wanting to go into 2025 and make this show bigger and better. For those who do support the show, want to financially support the show, there's a way to do it on Patreon, and you get extra content and perks as well. So we've got one tier at the moment, £3 a month. Diego is God tier, which I think is a pretty cool tier to join, because we know Diego is God. Diego is the man, the legend, and you'll be getting extra content. So priority questions when I do Q&As, I'm going to probably bring back added time or some variants of that show where I'm doing a weekly Q&A. There'll be weekly written articles that are exclusive to Patreon. There'll be early access to interviews and collabs that I do, along with other content that might not even make it to the YouTube or podcast feeds, just so people on Patreon can see it and support it, and interact with it. So if you want to financially support the show, £3 a month, Diego is God tier, link in the description box below. It'd be greatly appreciated if you could. But let's jump into it. So Maresca didn't have tons to say in the pre-match press conference. He was asked about Fofana's fitness, he was asked about Reece James, and of course facing a team, facing the same team in the space of a couple of days. I feel like looking at Newcastle, it's interesting, because I didn't do my preview obviously for the weekend game, and I felt watching Newcastle on Sunday as that game played out, and especially in the second half when they were trying to get back into the game. And a lot of the narrative around them last season was they really struggled with a congested fixture schedule. Like, even though they had some good nights in Europe and they progressed a little bit in the Cup, there definitely was a feeling throughout the course of the season they just didn't have the resources or the players basically to sustain what Eddie Howe wanted to do. And I kind of felt the same watching them on Sunday. You look at that starting 11 that started on Sunday, and you look across it, I think Nick Pope's a very good goalkeeper. Livramento and Lewis Hall, I think, are good fullbacks, only going to get better. Fabian Schär, I think, is a decent. Obviously, it's not Sven Botman in that defence. I think Dan Burn is a bit of a downgrade there. But then, Bruno Guimaraes is obviously a really talented midfielder. Sandro Tonali is hopefully going to progress for them. Joe Linton has developed into a very fine player. Miguel Almiron, we know, can be a good Premier League player. Isaac, who scored on Sunday, we know how good he is as well. And Harvey Barnes, I think, is an exciting player, along with Anthony Gordon. But then you looked at the subs. Joe Willock, not a bad player. Longstaff, all right. Jacob Murphy, Kelly. I mean, these are not players that, like Chelsea can, and that squad depth, and what do Newcastle need to kind of go to that next level and really compete. That is the thing that is clearly halting them. You do think, though, in contrast, because of maybe a lack of options, it probably will mean that Eddie Howe is going to play more of what to him and to us and to Newcastle is a first team compared to Chelsea. That doesn't mean I think it's going to be a mismatch. It's just for Chelsea's B team. It's how they deal with that, right? Because it's away from home. Newcastle know that there's a battle for European places again. There's a battle in the Premier League. The season hasn't started amazingly well. So this is kind of one of their routes to some form of success and that hunt for a trophy, finally winning a trophy. And Eddie Howe, will want to see that come to fruition whilst he's in charge, especially with some of the resources he has available to him. So I think that's one of the big things. And in looking at Chelsea and the B team, we keep on calling it that. And I think it's a little bit unfair because they have put some good performances in another game I didn't cover, Panathinaikos, and it links into this game because looking at the way that team performed and especially in attack, I thought Joao FELIX and MUDRYK were brilliant, and I think they will earn their starts in this game. But I think for the rest of the team, it's how they do the constant narrative of whether these players can push to get into the Premier League starting 11. But I think there is kind of already proof that can happen with Pedro Neto, right? Pedro Neto started against Panathinaikos. He has kind of been out of the first team or starting 11 in recent weeks, but he played well against Panathinaikos. I thought he had a decent impact the previous weekend away at Liverpool, and he gets his start against Newcastle and takes it. And maybe that will be inspiration for the B team and some of those players to think, well, I can actually make my mark here. Especially, I even think defensively, because defensively Chelsea are still not incredible. We still have some lapses, and it's one of those things where can any of those players really make their mark and change Maresca's mind that the Premier League back two, when everyone's fit and available, shouldn't just be Fofana and Colwell, which it has been so far this year. So let's jump into my starting 11. I think there are two or three areas that maybe are up for contention here. I think Jorgensen will start again. He made a really important save early on against Panathinaikos and probably deserved a clean sheet on the night. And, it's still with Jorgensen and Sanchez. We've talked about this and I was asked about this. Me and Louis spoke about it on the Chelsea Echo. It's very hard. It's kind of like a Petrovic situation last year with Sanchez because we just haven't seen, I personally haven't seen enough of Jorgensen to make a firm judgment yet. When does that come? I mean, for Petrovic, he broke into the team, didn't he, just before Christmas? So we're not that far away from that point this year. And, if Sanchez keeps on having howlers, he didn't have a bad performance against Newcastle or a calamitous performance, but he's still, one of the things about Sanchez, he still, for me, is just poor on the ball. And that's kind of his biggest defenders talk about how brilliant he is on the ball. And that's why he needed to be in front of Petrovic. And I don't buy it personally. But Jorgensen maybe will take that opportunity and will do what Petrovic did last year and take up that first spot before Christmas. And then we get into the back four. I'm a little bit frustrated, the Josh Akpom situation. I really am, because, you look at natural right backs and Reece James is going to be playing this game. Maybe Maresca feels that Gusto could, because I don't think Gusto featured at all against Panathinaikos, did he? But has started a lot of Premier League games. So it's kind of that interesting thing whether he feels I'll go with Gusto in this game because it is Newcastle, it's not one of the weaker teams, and maybe it's the right time to put him in there just to give me a natural right back, because instead it will likely be Axel Disasi, you suspect, who, again, I think especially against a better quality of opponent, I do have major concerns about. I just don't think he's nimble enough. I don't think he's defensively good enough. And maybe it could be an area that Newcastle find some joy when others haven't in recent weeks. I think Tosin Adarabioyo will start this game, and I think Benoit Badiashile will too. Left back, Cucurella did not start. He came off the bench against Newcastle. He started against Panathinaikos. Does he start this game? But then you look at Renato Vega and you think, I really like what I see from Vega. I like his aggression. I like his tenacity. I like his versatility. And I think he has an impact on Chelsea. And, Cucurella may be someone that can come off the bench in this game, but also be eyed to start against Man United next Sunday. So, I'm not sure. What do you guys think? I'll go with Vega because he is kind of the more natural B team player, but based just on the last two selections, maybe Cucurella and Gusto form a more natural fullback pairing because of, as I say, the quality of opponent. Then we get in central midfield. Cesare Casadei was pictured in training, but I think Enzo Fernandez and Kiernan Dewsbury Hall will be the midfield two again. I think Dewsbury Hall has got better with each performance. For Enzo Fernandez, I think this is a very important game because he is now, I think, been relegated to the B team. And it's on him. It's one of those things we talk about, right? Who's going to progress to the A team, but then what happens to those players who get replaced and how do they respond to that adversity and respond to being taken out of the first team? I think Enzo Fernandez really needs to up his game. There have been few times where he's put in really dominant displays, and I think for him, again, against a decent level opponent, it's imperative he starts to perform really well. Because, Romeo Lavia, we know he has his injury problems. You can't expect Moises Caicedo to play every single week, every single game, although I think he's been one of Chelsea's strongest players. It is something where Enzo Fernandez, I think, has to become a lot more influential. And maybe just there's a little bit of fear in there that Enzo and Dewsbury Hall isn't exactly the most defensively sound or rigid midfield partnership compared to Lavia and Caicedo. So again, if Newcastle play more of a first team, this may be an area where Chelsea are a little bit weaker, and see how Chelsea can counteract that. I think the attack is quite exciting as well, in the sense that Jadon Sancho was taken out the team, and I really hope that Sancho responds positively. Because Sancho started his Chelsea career in a really influential way. I think he impressed a lot of us, and I think he rightly got a lot of starts. It feels like he kind of maybe relaxed a little bit. I feel like in recent performances, he's been trying to do too much, trying to beat too many players, a little bit maybe more casual. And I feel like Enzo Maresca, has noticed that, or at least has acted on that by bringing in Pedro Neto. And that's what I like about kind of the healthy competition in the first team currently. And hopefully it motivates players like Sancho. Sancho can start on the right. I know he's predominantly started on the left for Chelsea, only started on the left for Chelsea, but he could potentially play off the right as well. I know he likes to cut onto his right foot from the left, and we see this a lot where, you kind of have wingers inverting. But, I think for Sancho, whether he starts on the right, the middle, the left, wherever it is, he needs to perform really well to get himself into that starting lineup. He can't obviously play against Man United because he's only on loan. But for Sancho, I think obviously it's a chance for him to perform. Joao Felix, rightly, I think will start this game after a really, really good and dominant performance against Panathinaikos. Exactly what you want from Felix. You want him floating at his best. I've been critical of Felix, but at his best, he should be one of these players that's dictating things, obviously making an impact, obviously connecting well. And I think him and MUDRYK will both start this game. I think their connection, and MUDRYK also starting the Conference League brilliantly. I think for both of these players, but especially MUDRYK, it was so imperative that they used the Conference League, and MUDRYK used the Conference League as a boost and a platform, because he needs to start progressing seriously as a Chelsea player. And I do wonder again whether Maresca's approach, we talked about this a month or two ago, where I think Maresca's different approach to MUDRYK, rather than the arm around the shoulder, maybe giving him a lot of patience rather than actually going, your performances aren't to the level currently, and I've got better players, better performing players like Neto and Sancho, who I'm going to look at before you. So it's on you to now perform. And I think MUDRYK has responded well, at least based on his performances in the Conference League. But this is, a level above, say, Panathinaikos again, but it still is an opportunity for MUDRYK. And obviously, Christopher Nkunku up top. How long that goes, I mean, Nicholas Jackson at the moment is brilliant. Nicholas Jackson is one of Chelsea's most influential players, and it's a really awkward thing because Nkunku can either play as a centre forward and then next you think he plays as a number 10 or a second striker. But Chelsea have one of the best players they've had in recent years in Cole Palmer. So, and it's not like Nkunku's had a bad start to the year. When Nkunku's played, I think he's scored. I think he's a ruthless finisher, I think, at times. I think he's someone that you kind of look at and go, he can be a level raiser. It's where he fits into that I think has been the awkward, kind of interesting conversation so far. But I do think he'll start this game. And I think Chelsea, despite my concerns in defence and midfield of maybe not being to the level it was on Sunday, I still think in attack Chelsea have got a lot there. And especially if Newcastle play a defence and maybe do rotate a little bit more and there's still that kind of lack of speed, Chelsea can exploit that. They absolutely can. So I'm really hopeful Chelsea can get through. It obviously would then give these players it should give these players the incentive to win anyway, for a number of reasons, to maybe progress into the Premier League starting lineup, but also it gives them potentially more minutes later down the line, because obviously Chelsea will be moving then into the quarter-final and could see Wembley potentially on the horizon. So I think this is a big game and hopefully Chelsea can rise to the occasion. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predicted lineup in the comments below. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.